A question that comes up very often when it comes to religious context is, why do bad things happen to good people? And I think this is something anybody's going to struggle with when they enter into the religious notions out there. Because with this idea of God, where you have somebody who cares about you and wants you to succeed, the idea of somebody suffering just doesn't make sense. If I have children, which I do, I don't want them to suffer. I want to save them from that pain. So we often think the same thing of God. But there are some issues with that particular notion. But the biggest reasons that bad things happen to good people are going to be the three things that I'm talking about. Now, really quickly, let's go into the concept of protecting your children from suffering, because I think all of us parents look at our children and go, well, I really don't want them to suffer. I don't like that they struggle with things. I really don't want that to be their life. But the reality is, we all learn through pain and suffering. We grow and become more. We figure out what it is we do and don't want through suffering, through pain. So oftentimes we want to spare our children the pain and suffering. The problem is, by sparing them the pain and suffering, we spare them the growth. We prevent them from actually becoming a decent, worthwhile human being who has something to contribute to the world. So I know that we all think hard lives are an excuse for bad behavior, but that's not actually the case. People who have hard lives usually come out the other side much more capable of helping other people get through their shit. So I would put myself into this category because I had a very, very challenging childhood. And it wasn't because I had horrible parents or anything. It was just, we had so many things happen when I was young. I lost somebody who was really, really close to me when I was 7, and that has shaped my entire life. And then we had 9/11 happen at that same year, and I had my sister born in that same year. So there was a lot of change that went on in a very short period of time. And then add on all the other difficulties I've faced over the years as I've grown up, and it's actually prepared me to be of aid to other people. So I think that's something we really need to keep in mind. So often we want to spare people suffering, when in fact sparing them suffering makes them less capable and a worse human, all things considered. But let's get into the specifics of this video. The first reason that bad things happen to good people is because good people are actually trained to be victims. Now, I know that this may seem kind of judgmental, but think about it for a minute. Most people who are bad, who do bad things, like sociopaths, for example, they don't look at life, they don't look at the situations, the bad results of their actions and think, oh, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Why? Because they're not anticipating a positive result. So when things don't come out the way that they expected, they move on and they look for the opportunity in that particular issue. Whereas those of us who are trained to be good people, we are also trained to be victims, because we're basically told, if you do the work, you will get positive results. So when you don't get the positive results, you feel depressed, you feel sad, you feel like you're a victim because things weren't supposed to work out this way, and now you're sad. And while that's okay, know that this is not a natural phenomenon per se. This is trained behavior. You don't have to react this way. So when something doesn't go the way that you're anticipating that it should, you have the opportunity to change your response. So the first reason that bad things happen to good people is because good people don't inherently look for how that thing, that result, was in fact good. So we tend to hold on to the negative. We tend to hold on to the pain and the frustration of not getting what we want, and then we view ourselves as victims. And that is the first, probably biggest reason why good things happen to bad people, because we just don't see them as opportunities. We see them as bad things when they're not. They're not necessarily bad, they just are. And that's something that's very, very important. Now, the second reason that bad things happen to good people is because we're not seeing the big picture. If you think about a God of the universe, he's got a lot of subjects. Humans are just one. You are just one of those subjects. And you don't have a good idea of what the big picture is. You can't see what's best for the entire world. You can't see what's best for the universe. You can't even see what's best for your neighborhood. So all things considered, when things happen to us or when things don't go the way that we're anticipating, we take it personally when it isn't necessarily personal. You may not understand why things went the way that they did. You may not see the big picture. But oftentimes, when you get past a problem and you look back at it, you realize that you actually benefited from that negative situation. And that's the same thing that happened to me when Joanna died. You know, I was 7 when she died. I was very angry about it. I got depressed. I had to go to therapy because I had no idea how to deal with this grief. But looking back from where I am today, I am amazed at how much that has shaped me as a person and how happy I am to be the person that I am now. And that's not something that a lot of people can say. I don't know many people who actually like themselves. And the fact that that event had to occur for me to feel that way about myself is okay. You know, like, sure, I would be happy if she were still alive. I would be glad if she were still a part of my life. But the reality is, she lived in Germany. She was going to go home anyway. She was not really going to be a part of my life. So the fact that she died probably was more impactful than if she had lived. And that sounds really crass. But the reality is, from the big picture perspective, her death probably had a bigger impact on me and my development than her life would have. And that doesn't sound like a pleasant thing to say, but that is how it is. You know, we had another exchange student who is still alive, who does still live in Germany. And while we do keep in contact, we don't really interact that much. So this is one of those things where it's like, I would not have known when the event happened that it would have impacted me the way that it did. And I would not be the person that I am without that event. And so it's hard to look back and regret the circumstances of that time because it was so instrumental in shaping me as an individual. And I'd say a lot of people have this same situation going on in their life, where the things that hurt you, the things that were hard, the things that brought you to tears and made you grieve may actually be the things you're most grateful to in the future because they shaped who you are as a person, because they made you face the importance of things in life. For me, for example, I had an inherent belief that life is valuable as a result of that death. I knew how quickly life could end. And so I didn't want to waste a second of my life. Now, I haven't necessarily figured out the best way to approach that in every scenario, but the fact that I feel that way, the fact that I am constantly looking for ways to make life better for myself and for other people leads me down paths that I would not have taken otherwise. And I'm very proud of myself for my willingness to take risks and put myself out there and try things. And that's probably not something most people are motivated into doing, and yet something that could be hugely beneficial toward improving their lives. So I do understand that we don't like being hurt. We don't like being sad. We don't like feeling grief. We don't like being in pain. But usually, when you look back at those scenarios, when you look back at those situations, you realize they actually benefited you. And I can't necessarily correlate and say that because of those bad things, you became a better person. But it does seem quite likely that because you dealt with that scenario, you learned a new skill and became something more than you were before. If life were just easy all the time, we would have no reason to become something new. So yes, the bad things suck. The things that hurt you suck. They're not fun. They're not pleasant. And I don't expect you to enjoy them. However, recognize that there is still life on the other side, and that if you can keep pushing forward, you will learn something. You will grow from this situation. And it's only actually by holding on to it and feeling the regret and keeping that pain in your life that it actually becomes a lasting problem, which is actually the third part of why bad things happen to good people. And this is the idea of holding grudges, where good people generally, because they're trained to be victims, are going to hold on to the pain of a situation. So I'm going to paint a picture for you here. This is likely the worst scenario that I can pretty much think of, where a woman is raped and gets pregnant by that rapist. That's the worst crime I know of. I personally think rape is much worse than murder because the victim has to live with the knowledge they were raped the rest of their life. Whereas a murder victim, they're dead. They don't have a memory, as far as we know, about that event. So while their family will suffer, I still think rape is worse. So you have this woman, she was raped, and now she's pregnant by the rapist. Can't get much worse than that. Now, I am going to make it worse in a second here. But what happens if that woman gets hit by a car and loses her memory? She has no idea now that she's been raped. All she has is the information that she is pregnant and in the hospital. She has no idea who she is. She has no idea what's going on with her life. And now all she can do is move forward. Yes, somebody may tell her at some point that she was raped, but she doesn't have any memory of the event. She has no idea who her rapist was. And the only thing that can really happen at that point is for her to be like, okay, so that's how I got pregnant. That may or may not be helpful. And maybe I need to keep my eye out for somebody who is coming to attack me. But realistically, there's not this emotional trauma. There's not this baggage that she's holding on to because she has no memory. So the reality of the situation is, no matter what happens to you, no matter how bad it is, you don't actually have to hold on to it. It doesn't actually have to impact your life. Now, I'm not saying that you are to blame for what happens in your life all the time, because there are absolutely things that you cannot control, and that has to be something that you're comfortable with. However, you are in control of your reaction. You are allowed to change your mind about how you want to allow something to impact your life. So I'm not going to say that any woman who's been raped is to blame for that rape. However, she does have the power to choose the life that she wants to live from here. That's not easy. I'm going to admit that right up front. I've known many people who have suffered from rape, and that is not something that I think is easy to get past. Thankfully, it is not something I've had to deal with, but it's impacted 70 to 80% of the women that I know, and that is insane to me. But so many of those women have been able to say, this does not reflect on who I am as a person, and I choose to live a life where this is not going to be an influence on it. And I think that is such a powerful thing. And they can take their story and help other women who are in this scenario and say the same thing. Like, you are not at fault for what happened to you. You get to take this scenario and use it to help other people and to help prevent this from happening in the future, and so on and so forth. You know, these are the women who are going to lead that change. So it's that decision to lead a different life, to stop allowing the past to define your future, that ultimately creates a better world. Because once again, without that struggle, there is no reason to grow. So I will never say rape is good or helpful or beneficial to society. I think it is a truly heinous crime, and I do not think it should be allowed in any sense of the word whatsoever. However, the fact that it's our memory and our emotional attachment to the situation that makes it bad is important to keep in mind. So imagine we have this same woman, she's been raped, she's pregnant, and now she's lost her legs because she got hit by a car. Once again, she has amnesia. All she can do is live her life from where she is now. So she's going to approach life saying, okay, how do I move forward? And ultimately, that's what all of us can do. We can say, I am going to move forward from here. And that's what gets us to that next place. That's what allows us to become the testimony that helps somebody else in life. So we look at these bad things in life and we say, they're so horrible, they're so criminal, they're horrifying. I'm so angry and depressed that these things exist. But what we don't recognize is that these negative events shape us in ways that we can't be shaped otherwise. It's a refining process. And we all have our struggles. We all have these pains. We all have things that happen to us. But when you get far enough past it, and when you look at those situations and you say, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? You become amazing. You become so much more than you ever could have been had that situation not occurred. So I know it seems crass. I know that it seems harsh. But as somebody who has faced horrible things, I can't not believe this, because I'm so grateful for the pain of the past now. I can't look back and be upset by it. I mean, I can cry. I can be stuck in an emotion for a little while. But the reality is, I would not be me had those not happened. And I love me. And I don't think I would love me the way that I do had I not had to work through that. So, in all honesty, it may benefit us more to have more bad things happen. Not that you want that to happen. Not that we want to live that life. But it is a theory. And there may be some validity to this concept. So I know that you don't like the struggle. I know you don't like the pain. But pain is there for a reason. It helps us grow. And ultimately, growth, I think, is the most amazing thing any of us can experience ever in our lives. So that is why I believe bad things happen to good people.